Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een ma ba'du. So today, inshallah, just to let everybody know how we got to this point. Numerous times, like after classes and stuff like that, we have what we call a little side conversation. And a lot of times people have questions on what happened when we went to study. How did it happen? Where did it start? How did you do certain things? So we were recently talking to a couple brothers, maybe last weekend, and the idea was given numerous times that we should maybe tell what happened when we went to study. Now, we did something like that in general maybe a couple months ago about what really happens when you go overseas, which was a general idea of what happens for any student. But now we're going to try to move into some more detailed personal stories. Hopefully, the intention, hopefully, inshallah, is that it'll be an encouragement for the brothers and sisters in our community to see that there's people that come from where you come from who had the opportunity to study Islam, who actually came back to the same communities that they left and try to help people. So that's what this is, and this is going to be, inshallah, this is going to be a series of different students that went to study and what happened and what was their personal story and their journey. So this is just a light introduction of how we got to this point, what to expect coming forward. A little more detailed than the last program. The last program, we just really gave a skeleton, an outline of what it looks like when you go study, and some of the general things, some of the general difficulties, obstacles that students who go study might face. But now we get into a little more personal, because even though we all there together, everybody kind of had some different experiences. Everybody had different family situations, so it's a little different. And everybody, at the end of the day, everybody had to deal with it and keep moving forward in order to complete the goal that we were trying to complete. So I'm gonna step out the way and get to shake some coffee so he could do what needs to be done here. And I pray that it's an encouragement for everybody, that it's an encouragement that this is, in reality, we have brothers here right in Philadelphia, older brothers in their 70s, 60s and 70s, older brothers who were here before some of us were even Muslim. And a lot of times those older brothers die, and we never get the history of where Islam came from in our area. So part of this is preserving the history in our area from our generation, as that's all we can do. What we can do is try to benefit from the elders, and they can pass down the information that they have and the benefit that they had to give us, and we can try to preserve the information that we have from our generation and history, and hopefully it'll be an encouragement and help us moving forward. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. Faddal. And just how it's going to go. What we're saying. خلاص تفضل يا اخي. تفضل ما تسمع. Easy ان شاء الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا. اللهم زدنا علما إنك أنت عليم الحكيم. Today, inshallah ta'ala, is brothers requested from us a while ago to ask questions about our particular path and what we went through personally, becoming Muslim, studying Islam, etc. We kind of been running away from this for a while, but the brothers kind of pressed us, and so inshallah ta'ala, the brothers going to ask questions and Inshallah, we're going to answer them. Some of the questions we do know, and some of them we don't know. But inshallah, tafadhal.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا ويرضى. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد. IMFC presents our series, My Life as a Student of Knowledge. Today we are here with one of our brothers in Islam, Imam Ali Davis, who is one of the imams at Imam Muslim Family Center that is located in West Philadelphia at 4075 Lancaster Avenue. This neighborhood was notorious back in the 80s, and people nicknamed this place the Black Bottom from the years of violent crime and drug wars that infested this neighborhood. By the mercy of Allah, our brothers had the ability to open up a masjid in the heart of West Philadelphia. We are here now to interview our brother about his journey in Islam as a student of knowledge. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you doing today, akhi?
Alhamdulillah.
Before we get into this interview, can you please introduce yourself for those who might be tuning in right now that might be unaware of who you are?
I don't know what you. My name is Ali Davis.
Alhamdulillah.
Born and raised in Philadelphia.
So was you born and raised in Philadelphia, and what part of the city?
Yes, I'm born and raised in Philly. I'm from the Logan section of the city.
Was you raised with both parents in your household?
Yes, I was raised with my mother and my father in the house.
So did you come from a religious family? Or any religious ministers or pastors in your family?
No. Actually, well, my mother, yeah. So my family, before I became Muslim, my family they have a church here in West Philly, a really big church here in West Philadelphia. My mother's side also was very religious, and I was raised Christian. So as a Christian growing up, I was never really convinced about practicing Christianity, honestly. And so that's the initial part.
What high school did you attend and graduate from?
I went to Central High School, graduated from Central High School.
Was education a staple component inside your family structure growing up?
It was. Education was important because I had a goal of getting out my neighborhood. So it was important to go to school and try to learn something so I can pull myself together and get out of the neighborhood I grew up in.
Do you have a good relationship with both of your parents?
I do. So my father passed away last summer. He was probably like one of the closest people to me, if not the closest person to me. My mother, obviously, I'm very close to my parents, and I'm close to my mother now. And neither one of them were Muslim. My parents were not Muslim.
How did your father influence you in your personal life?
So my father, he made it a big deal for me growing up to be a man, not to be a follower. And I remember when I was younger, we was on 9th and Lindley Ave when I was growing up, and my dad said, I see you out in the corners. He said, one of these days, this is what he told me. He said, you're going to get killed or go to jail. That's what he told me. And he said, look at your friends, they don't have dads. You do. So you got to move like it. And at the time, it didn't make sense. It was like, whatever, I don't understand what he's talking about. But shortly thereafter, I had a couple friends go to jail, a couple friends get killed, and it was all right, I got to get myself together.
What was the environment like growing up in the city of Philadelphia in the 90s?
It was rough. I don't think it's as rough as it is what these kids are going through now, but people that are our age growing up during that time, we all thought it was rough. Drugs and, the same type of stuff. It's just, when we were growing up, people had beef for a reason. A lot of times it was over money and stuff like that. Right now, when we talk to the young people, we just trying to understand where the problem started. At least in our generation, it was clear to know why we got a problem with each other.
Okay. Did you find it difficult going to school and operating outside of school in your own neighborhood?
I did. So when I was going to school, I had to be a chameleon. Going to Central, there was a certain vernacular I had to use to go there. And then I went back around my neighborhood. I had to learn how to switch it up. So I was learning how to move in each crowd. I could move on Wall Street and I could move in the hood.
Okay. Did you find an outlet outside of school to keep yourself occupied or to stay out of trouble, like hobbies, music, or sports? Or did you indulge in any type of street activity?
The last part I'm gonna leave out. The first, I mean, growing up in Philly, it was hard to escape street activity. Anybody that's growing up in Philly, it's very difficult to escape that. Mm-hmm. But when I was younger, I used to rap and I used to play football. In fact, I used to rap with the imam right here when we were younger.
Okay.
In high school.
Was you good at football?
This was before Islam.
Was you good at football?
You gotta ask the people that played with me.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Did you consider yourself religious or God-fearing person growing up?
I did to some extent. I mean, I was conscious. I wanted to do the right thing. It was if I did something I wasn't supposed to do, I kind of felt bad about it, and that's partly because of the parents that I had. Okay. My parents kind of instilled in me the right and wrong. So, the thing is, growing up in Philly is difficult. You can have the best household, but when you leave the house and you walk out in the streets, that's the world you're living with. So you have to figure out a way to navigate that. Right. And so that was one of the things that I had to learn growing up, how to navigate my environment.
Did you have any friends growing up that impact your life in a positive way?
I did. I had one friend, and I had one of my friend's fathers he was very influential when I was growing up. He was a businessman. I used to always look up to him. I said, one day I want to be like him. So I used to watch what kind of cars he had, how he moved, how he dressed. He was fly. And then one of my friends that I looked at when I became Muslim was Saeed, Imam Saeed. When we were in high school, I wasn't Muslim, and I saw them making wudu one day, and I was like, what the heck are they doing? And so he had good character, good manners, and there was another friend that I had growing up. We went to high school together. This is Imam Idris and Imam in Masjid Allah. We went to high school together, and he was an exemplary person throughout high school. Somebody that you could always talk to. He was always the same. He never switched up on you. He was a good dude. And so when I first took my Shahada, these people were influential to me when I first became Muslim.
So what age did you meet Saeed?
I want to say I was 18, 17, 18.
Okay. When was the first time you heard about Islam, and what did you do to find out more about Islam?
The first time, I heard about Islam when I was younger. But, growing up in a Christian home, your family's against it. So I was just like, at that time, I would go to church on Sundays in West Philly, and I would see the FOI handing out newspapers on 52nd Street.
Nation Islam.
The Nation of Islam. They was handing out newspapers. So that was my first impression of Islam back then. And then in high school, when I started working, Saeed and I used to work on the same job. There was a lot of young Muslims that worked on the same job with us. So that was my real first introduction to being around Muslims. I would watch all of them, and I was like that. And so one of the brothers, I think his name was Mahdi. I think his name was Mahdi. One day I came to work, and he was like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Nothing." So he wanted to debate Christianity with Islam. So at the time, I wasn't Muslim, but I was Christian, but I wanted to at least defend what I was on. Even though it was batil, even though it was false, I wanted to defend it. So he started asking me questions that I didn't have the answers to, and I was like, "Dad, I got to go home and research." And so that was my first real introduction to Islam.
Okay. What was your determining factor for you that you knew deep down inside that Islam was the truth?
All this happened when I was at work. That was, I'm going to be honest, me working at that job it was in Ardmore. We were young. Working on that job was probably like one of the best things that ever happened to me. It was far from my house. I was getting home from work like 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. But being at that job, it kind of, one day I left work and I was convinced that Islam was the truth. And the funny thing is, it was a guy that worked with us. He was an older brother. And he said, "Are you ready to take your shahada?" And I was like, "No, I'm not ready to become Muslim yet because I'm still a little bit in the streets. So I wanted to get myself all the way together first before I became Muslim." And so he said, well, listen, if you die like you are right now, there's no chance you can go to paradise. But if you take your shahada and take your time and work yourself, until you get the way you need to be, Allah might forgive you. And I was like, why you didn't tell me that before? So after he told me that, that's when I took my shahada.
Okay. What year did you embrace Islam? How old was you?
I was 19. This was 1997.
So what was the turning point in your life that you decided that you wanted to study Islam abroad?
I think after September 11th happened, I was at work. I was working in D.C. at the time, and a lot of people were asking people at that time, you know, they were showing verses of the Quran all on the news, and it made Islam look really bad. And so at the time, I said, well, I'm Muslim, and people are asking me questions I don't have the answers to.
Okay.
So that was the first thing I realized, like, oh, it's really a lot about Islam I don't know. So that was the first time I said I need to learn something. I need to learn more about the religion.
Okay, perfect. What was your experience like being a Muslim in the U.S. Army Reserve?
I wasn't in the reserve. I was active duty. I was in the Army for a small part of time. I used to jump out of planes and all that crazy stuff. And as a Muslim, when I first went in, I didn't really know the permissibility of going into the military, so on and so forth. And I went in after college. Like once I was in college and I went in. And when I was in the military, I studied like IT and all of that. But it was, as a Muslim, being in the military was kind of difficult. But it forced me to learn even more.
Okay.
And while I was in there learning about Islam, I realized this really wasn't where I need to be. And so, you know, alhamdulillah, I was able to get out, and that was that.
All right. Did you graduate from college before going overseas to study Islam abroad?
I
and
did.
What was your degree in before leaving America?
So I did graduate from college prior to going overseas. I have a degree in IT, information technology.
All right. Prior to going overseas to study Islam, did you have a career or a job that you had to sacrifice to pursue Islamic knowledge overseas?
I did. In fact, I was working at IT for Verizon. I was working there in D.C. I was making a whole lot of money at that time. And when I told my father, I said, Dad, I'm gonna go overseas and study Islam. He told me I was crazy. He thought I joined some type of terrorist group or something. He was calling all around. He thought I was crazy. And you remember that? And so when he did that, I had some money saved up, and I left. It was an opportunity at the time. The funny thing is, at the time I was headed overseas. Prior to that, I got accepted for a master's degree in software engineering, and I had an opportunity either A, go get my master's in software engineering, or B, go overseas and study Islam. So it was these older women that used to work with me, and I was talking to them about what should I do. And so one of the older women, she said, listen, go overseas and learn your religion, because you'll never, and she wasn't Muslim, she said, you'll never get the opportunity again. You can always come back and get your master's degree, but you can't always go study Islam and live abroad. So she was like, take advantage of the opportunity. So I left. Her name was Eva.
Alhamdulillah. May Allah guide Islam, I
mean.
Many Muslims are under the false assumption that most students of knowledge didn't sacrifice anything in pursue Islamic knowledge. What sacrifices did you make personally in achieving your goal?
In terms of what, like quitting my job and
family, leaving people
behind? I mean, it was
behind?
hard. I mean, leaving your family. The hard thing is being gone for 10 years. When you come back, you have little cousins you don't even know. They grew up. It's like you missed their whole life almost, right? 10 years is a long time.
Yes.
But it's like, and then when you go back overseas, you know the little kids over there that are grown, but your family members you kind of miss out on. People get sick, people pass away. My aunt passed away when I was over there. My cousin died when I was over. So these things happen, and it's not like as a student now you can't just get on the plane and fly back. It's a whole process, because if you come back, then they may not let you come back to study. Yes. So there was a lot of things like that we had to deal with that we didn't necessarily understand that it would be that way.
Okay. After embracing Islam in the 90s, so it's around 97, right? Mm-hmm. Did you attend any Islamic lectures or seminars? And which ones, if you attend anyone, did like a major effect in your life?
There was a lecture There was a lecture that I attended. Probably had the biggest effect on me was there was a lecture at Morgan State University. It was called Happiness and Salafiyah. That was the first one. And then after that, it was other lectures that came after that, but that was the first lecture that really, I'll tell you a story about that. When I went to that, it was a conference. When I went there to that conference, I was still new to Islam. I didn't know nothing. It was in Baltimore at Morgan State. So I go there, and I'm standing in line to get some food. And I remember I was trying to, and a brother behind me was asking me about, I think he was asking me about a website. And at that time, S-Pub's website was like the biggest thing in Philadelphia, in the area at that time. So the guy, he asked me, the brother said, do you go to the S-Pub's website? I'm like, what's that? It was like a collective gasp in the room. Everybody turned around, looked at me like, what? You don't know this? So now I'm like, dang, what the heck is that? So now I'm like, well, wait, let me write this down. I got it. So I went home. I remember I went home that night. I pulled up their website. I couldn't even follow it. I said, Dad said, are you a beginner Muslim, middle Muslim? So I was clicking in each field, and I'm like, Dad, I don't know none of this stuff. So I used to sit up on my computer trying to study their website to learn about Islam. And at that time, that was like the Islamic source of knowledge was going to their website.
When was the first time you heard about a scholar or a student of knowledge in Islam?
So it's a story. So I want to say, I forget what year it was, but I was making i'tikaf in Maryland. It was a brother, his name was Jamal Muhammad Rahimahullah. I'm going to give you the little story then since we got some time. We're making i'tikaf, and he was born and raised Muslim. I wasn't. So at the time, I looked at him as being one of the best. May Allah have mercy on him. He passed away. Allah yarhamu. At the time, he was one of the best Muslims I ever met. So wherever he went, I wanted to be with him. So he said he was making i'tikaf. I had to figure out what that was. Once I learned what that was, I said, I'm going to do that too. So I went with him to the masjid to make i'tikaf during the last 10 nights of Ramadan. While we were there, he was teaching me sort of to feel in certain small surah in the Quran. After that, he was like, I'm going to make Hajj. And I was like, dang. I said, man, I'm not good enough to make Hajj, man. Like how many years, and I'm asking, how many years you got to be Muslim before you can go make Hajj? And, you got to know a certain amount of deen before you can go make Hajj. He was like, no, you just go ahead and apply. So I'm like, well, how do you apply? So he showed me how to apply. And he was going as guest of the king of Saudi Arabia. So he told me to apply with him. So I applied. I didn't think I would get accepted. So I applied. Alhamdulillah, I got accepted. So when I got accepted to go make Hajj with him, this was I want to say it was in 03, right? This was 03. So I went with him. We went on a Hajj trip in 03 as guests of the king of Saudi Arabia. When we got there, I remember distinctively, we were in the hotels in Medina. It was a hotel called Move and Pick. He was my roommate. So while we're in the hotel, I fell asleep. So when I got up, he was gone. So I'm like, I waited for him to come back. I'm like, Dad, where you go, man? You left me. He's like, man, I went to a sheikh named Abdullah Bukhari. I went to his house. I was like, what? I said, what the heck is a sheikh? He was like, people that educate people on Islam. So I was like, Dad, that's crazy. I said, so if you go again, let me go with you. So he never went again, and we came back to America. Okay. So by this time, I had moved out of Philadelphia. I was living in the Maryland area, Laurel, to be exact. I was living in Laurel, Maryland. And one day, I called him. I said, what's up? He said, yeah, I'm coming back from Chester. I'm like, what's up there? He was like, yeah, I went to Chester because the students of knowledge, this is the first time I heard students of knowledge. The students of knowledge came to Masjid Fajr. So I'm like, what's a student of knowledge and who are they? At the time, he was talking about the brothers from Salafi Publications came to America and they were students of knowledge. So I'm asking him, what's a student of knowledge? He said, well, remember that scholar? So these people that study were scholars. I'm like, dang, how you become one of them? Where you sign up at to be one of them people? So that was my initial spark of wanting to learn.
So what made you want to go overseas to study Islam, knowing that you was going to a foreign land like Saudi Arabia?
So I guess the question would be, what would make me comfortable doing that?
Yeah.
There was a website in the early 2000s. There was a website that was started by a brother, Musa Richardson. At the time, before I got to Qura, Musa Richardson was the elder student there at the time. He had a website called Becca.net. Becca.net. On his website, he talked about students of knowledge and the life of a student, what you have to do day to day. It was like a thorough explanation of what you needed to know in order to be a student of knowledge. So I would literally read that website every day and try to like look at every piece of living abroad and just read whatever I could read about it. And at the time, it was like if I don't get accepted in there, I was going to Yemen. So it was like one or the other. If I'm going to Saudi or I'm going to Yemen, but I'm going somewhere. That was my mindset.
How old were you when you went overseas to study Islam, and were you married?
Yes, I was married. I think I was 24, 25 when I left.
Did you have any children before moving overseas?
I did. I had 2 kids that were raised over there.
All right. Do you recommend Muslims raising their children overseas in an Islamic country?
So we've seen kids that were raised overseas up until they became 25, 30, they got problems. A lot of them. Am I right, sir? So I would recommend raising your kids over there up to a certain point, but don't separate them from America because they're going to need the American experience. And I guarantee you all the brothers that took their kids overseas and raised them up to adults, I guarantee you they're all going to say the same thing right now. At the time, though, no one had done it. So we were like in a process of pioneering it and see what we was, we saw people that came before us and those people that came after us. But the people that came before us, we see their kids. And a lot of times it's not what you think it is.
How did you get accepted inside the Islamic University of Mecca, known as Qura? Did you apply online or in person?
So actually I applied in person. Myself and brother Jamil Finch, we applied at the same time. We actually made Hajj together that year, and we both applied to Medina and we both applied to Qura at the same time.
So did y'all get accepted at the same time?
He got accepted 6 months before me. So I think he went like in September, October, and I went in January.
Okay.
Or the end of December.
How did y'all apply in person? Was it an interview?
It was an interview. Was it in
Arabic or English?
It was English. There was a doctor named Dr. Saleh Adiri. Okay. He was the one that was responsible for the American students. And I remember at the time, Jamil didn't have any kids. So at the time when we both interviewed together, Dr. Saleh said to me, you can't go because you have a wife and kids. I was heartbroken. I was trying to convince, argue my case. And Jamil was like, he was like, well, listen, if you don't get accepted, I'll give you my spot. That's when me and him became cool when he said that. Mm-hmm. I was like, that's pretty deep.
Wow. MashaAllah. Were there many students of knowledge in Mecca and Medina that was from Philly or from the East Coast? If so, can you name a few?
So in Medina or in Mecca?
In both.
So I'll start with Medina because we studied in Mecca. In Medina, at the time, you had Sheikh Tahir, Shadid was there, Anwar Wright was there, Abdul Wali Nelson was there from the East Coast that I knew. Abu Dhahira was there in Medina. Because we didn't go to Medina all the time. Oh, how am I forget Mufti? But Mufti came after. Mufti came after us. Okay. And then in Mecca, it was only a few. It was only a few Americans altogether. But it was, we had Amin Manning from Philadelphia. And that was it. He was the only guy from Philly. From the East Coast, it was excluding myself, Saeed and Jamil, excluding us. It was Amin Manning. He preceded us there. Musa Richardson. There was another brother from New York. Danny. I forget his last name. Stuck for the law. If he's watching this, he's going to be like, come on, Aki, how you going to forget my name? Delgado, yes. And it was Danny that was there. Who else was there with us? Ali Roach. This is my man, Ali Roach. Ali Roach was a legend. He was a legend. Sheikh Muqbil, rahimahullah ta'ala, he gave him a laqab. He gave Ali a title. He used to call him Ali al-Nahwi because his Arabic was so good. He was like one of the toughest students there from the East Coast. Who? Farouk? Farouk. I'm going to forget Farouk. Farouk was there before I got there. Farouk, he might have got there. And I'll tell you the story about Sheikh Farouk. So the beginning of my study process, I was with Jamil Finch. He and I were together most of the time. And so when we got to Qura, we walked in the classrooms, and it was empty one day. And Farouk Post was sitting in the classroom memorizing Thalathatul Usul. So me and Jamil was like, man, you got the whole joint memorized? He was like, yeah. So he started running it down. We was like, dang, we got to tighten up. And so watching him, Farouk, memorize Thalathatul Usul, that's when we started our mission of being real serious about stuff. We were serious before we got there, but then we met other students that we saw that may have been stronger than us. It was all right, we got to tighten up. So we kind of motivated each other when we first got there.
Was the students, Ali Roach and Farouk Post, was they African-American students?
No, they were white brothers. Farouk, though, he came maybe like a year before we got there. Ali Roach was already there. He was there for 5-6 years.
Okay. How many years you were in Mecca before being accepted into one of the Islamic colleges?
2.5 years.
2.5 years?
Yeah, there's a story behind that too.
Academically, what was your GPA score in Qura in the Arabic program?
Coming out of the Arabic, the only reason why I know my GPA coming out of the Arabic program was because if our GPA wasn't high enough, so the thing about Qura is this, it's not like Jamiat Islamiyya, it's not like the Islamic University of Medina where pretty much all the students go to the college. The way Mecca is set up, you have to have Mumtaz or excellent GPA to even be considered to go to the college. And then with that, at Qura, they only accept one person from each country. So for example, if it's 2 Americans, only one's going into college. If it's 2 people from Canada, only one's going to the college. So when I got there, it was me and Jamil Finch. So it was 2 of us. So we pushed each other, but it was like that. We was always hoping we both got in. So, and I'm gonna say my GPA was a 3.9 out of a 4.0. But my GPA wasn't good enough to get in. Jamil Finch's GPA was a 3.91 out of 4.0. That's how I remember this. All right. So my first go round, I didn't get in. So this is why it took me 3 years, because once I finished the Arabic program, I went to this program called Takhasus, which is it's an Arabic diploma program they had at Qura. So I sat in that college for a semester, and then I got accepted into the university after that.
What kind of college is Qura?
What kind of college? What do you mean? Is it just a strictly Islamic university?
Nah, that's later on. Most of the students that study abroad usually pick the College of Hadith or the College of Dawah. Why did you pick the College of Qada'a, being as though it has the reputation of being one of the hardest colleges, Islamic colleges?
So to be honest, like once I didn't get accepted into the college the first go round, I became like more hungry. I was hungry, like I was super hungry, right? So the way it started was we used to sit with quite a few mashayikh at that time, but there were 2 mashayikh that had 2 different paths of teaching. One was Sheikh Wasil al-Abbas, and one was Sheikh Abdul Majid al-Subayl. Sheikh Wasil al-Abbas, he's one of the mashayikh of the Haram right now. He told us, you know, it's important for you guys to go study hadith. So all through our time in the Arabic program, we were intending on studying hadith. Sheikh Abdul Majid al-Subayl, he's a faqih. So he was like, I want you guys to study fiqh. So at the time, we were like, man, we ain't following no madhabs. We want Quran and Sunnah. We don't want all that stuff you're talking about. This is what we would say amongst ourselves. We wouldn't say this to the sheikh, though. We just to ourselves. And then one day, Sheikh Abdul Majid, he said to us, now this is before we even got to Qadha. We're still talking about Sharia. We're not even talking about Qadha. Sheikh Abdul Majid al-Subayl, he told us, he said, listen, if you study fiqh, understand that where you come from, your people need this. But at the time, we're not thinking about everybody else. We're thinking about ourselves. We didn't even, and that's another conversation, we never even thought about giving dawah. That wasn't even what we was trying to do. But our thing was for ourselves. Okay. So he said, in Islam, there's a ruling for everything you do in life. So we're like, what does that mean? He's like, there's a ruling for when you wake up. There's a ruling for when you go to sleep. There's a ruling for when you put your clothes on, ruling when you take your clothes off. Every aspect of your life, there's an Islamic ruling for it. We was like, Dad, that's deep. I said, well, maybe we should study that. So when I got out of the Takhasus program, I went to the College of Sharia. Jamil was already in the College of Sharia. So when I got to the College of Sharia, I met Sheikh Muhammad Al-Harbi that came here. I met him. He was the department head of College of the Department of Judicial Law. So I found out after that Sheikh Abdul Majid, he actually taught in that department. So we came to class one day and we were studying with him a book called Umdat al-Fiqh. We came to class one day and I said, Sheikh, why you didn't tell us to go to Qadha? Why did you tell us to go to Sharia and not go to Qadha? He said to me, you barely wanted to study Sharia. Why would I tell you to go to Qadha? So you can quit? And I was like, nah. So once we got into Sharia, then I looked at Qadha. The Qadha program was a lot more extensive in terms of the different types of books they study, and the classroom size was a lot smaller. So you could ask more questions and have what you say, manaqashat ilmiya. Like you can have intellectual debates with your professors to make sure you understood the material. And the reason for that is that most of the students that graduate from those colleges, they go on to become judges. So the mashayikh that taught in those departments, they were real keen on ensuring that you understood the material. Whereas when I was in Sharia, we all studied the same book, Rawd al-Murbi'. We all studied that book, which is an explanation of Zad al-Mustaqni'. But the thing is, in Sharia, the classroom size might have been like 60, 70 students. Whereas in Qadha, the class might be like 8 students, 10 students, and you're going over the same book. So my thing was like, Dad, let me go to smaller class, because my Arabic not that strong anyway. And I know I can ask more questions and get more understanding if I go have a smaller classroom size. So that's why I switched. But that wasn't the real reason. That was another reason. Another reason was there was a sheikh. His name was Sheikh Abdullah bin Aqil, rahimahullah ta'ala. He used to be called the Sheikh al-Hanabila. He was one of the major scholars, rahimahullah ta'ala. He passed away. I remember asking him, do you think I should switch from Sharia to Qadha? And he said, well, can you be a judge in your country? And I was like, no. He said, then why do you want to switch? And I was like, because it looks like it has more, we study harder books that, and we'll talk about that if you ask me. We study more detailed books. He said, well, then go. If it's about ilm, if you think that they have more knowledge to give you, then go. So I went. And before that, I went and met with Sheikh Muhammad Al-Harbi, the one that came here. He was the head of the department at the time. So, you know, where we come from, we real judgmental. Philly people, we real judgmental. So when we went into the department, I'm looking at the sheikh. We would judge people. I'm looking at the sheikh. I'm like, Dad, he looked like he on a sunnah. You know what I'm saying? I'm looking at his stove. I'm watching. Remember that? I'm like, Dad, sheikh looked like he on a sunnah. So he's looking at me like, yeah, we get it in over here. I said, all right, this is where I'm going to go. And the thing is, the department was supposed to be harder. And the reason for that is, like I said, a lot of those students, they go on to become judges. So my thing was, if I'm going to leave America, quit my job, do all of that to come over, I'm going to just go for the highest thing. If I don't do well, then I'll go to Sharia, but I'm going to try to go for the gusto. That was my mindset.
Okay. Was it common for American students to study in the College of Qadha?
No. In fact, there was one other American student that studied before. His name was Jabril Spate. He was the only American that studied in Qadha. Now, there was other brothers from like Central America. There was a brother named, what's his name, is Asad? The brother that passed away, Allah yarhamu. There was a brother that studied in Qadha before us. But the Americans, it was, I'll tell you, it was only, subhanAllah. So the brother Jabril Spate, he was the first American to graduate from the Department of Qadha. But then once he graduated, they shut that department down, opened up their own college. So I was the first American to graduate from that college. Saeed might have been the second or the third American to graduate from that college. I don't know if any more came after us. Is anybody else that finished from Qadha? I said myself, Salman, and Abu Sajid. Who else? So we don't know any other Americans that grad. In fact, as recently, I don't even think they allow any more Americans in that department anymore. So we kind of got in at the right time and got out.
MashaAllah. Who was the first scholar did you study with? Why? And what books did you study and memorize?
That's a long question. All right. So the first scholar we studied with was Sheikh Ahmed Bazmul. He taught myself, and this was myself and Jamil Finch. He taught us Minhaj al-Salikin. That was the first book we studied with, if I'm not mistaken. It was that, and I think it was Kitab al-Tawheed too. I think it was Minhaj al-Salikin and Kitab al-Tawheed. We studied that. In terms of memorizing, we didn't memorize that many books. We memorized a couple. So we started with Thalathatul Usul, Qawaid Arba, parts of Kitab al-Tawheed, and then we memorized Al-Ajrumiyya, Baykuniyya. We memorized Arba'in an-Nawawiyya, the 50 hadith, not the 40. Okay. And we did that in 5 days because Sheikh Tahir and them in Medina, they had like this vicious memorization program. So we was like, man, we try to get on a program. So Jamil and I, we memorized that. And then we started after that Bulugh al-Maram. But we didn't finish Bulugh al-Maram. We didn't finish it.
And then after roughly around what year you was there?
Say again?
Roughly around what year? 4th year? You was doing
we was doing this in the beginning. I want to say after the first. So the first year in the Arabic program, we actually paid for Arabic tutors to help us too while we was in the Arabic program, just so that we wanted to be tight. And every time we would be around each other, we would do. I don't know anybody familiar with Arabic. We would do like i'rab. So like if we're talking and somebody say a sentence, we're like, all right, I ought to like explain this sentence that you just said. So we'll break. we'll be at somebody's house with a pen and a pad, writing them on a board, make sure everybody knew their stuff. And the thing is, in our circle, you wasn't allowed to not know what you're talking about. Like it was serious. Like you couldn't be around us and start talking about stuff you didn't know what you was talking about. So you had to be sharp. We wasn't allowing it in Mecca.
Alhamdulillah. Did you ever get a chance to study with Sheikh Rabi' ibn Hadi al-Madkhali? Hafidhullah.
Yes. So I studied with Sheikh Rabi' for quite some time. I finished with Sheikh Rabi' the book Bahd al-Hadith from Ibn Kathir, Aqidah Ashab al-Hadith from Imam al-Sabuni. I studied parts of Kitab al-Sharia lil-Ajuri. And to be honest, in the city of Philadelphia, of all the students here, the student that studied with Sheikh Rabi' the longest was Jamil Finch. After him would have been myself. Then after me would have been Amin Manning.
Alhamdulillah. Who were the scholars from the ulama that you benefited from in Mecca, and in what science of Islam did you benefit from?
So we have scholars that we study with personally, and then we have scholars we study with in general. So what said it? Because it's groups.
Give me your private, personal classes with the teachers.
Right. So like I said, we first started with Sheikh Ahmed Bazmul, Hafidhullah Ta'ala. And then once he stopped teaching myself and Jamil at the time, we were hurt because he stopped our private classes. And so I remember telling Musa Richardson, I said, man, the Sheikh stopped teaching us these classes. And so he said, well, you make dua that Allah replace him with somebody better. And he reminded us of the hadith of Salama. When Abu Salama passed away, the Prophet ﷺ told her to make dua that Allah replace him with somebody better for you. And so Salama said, well, who could be better than Abu Salama? And so she wound up marrying the Prophet ﷺ. So we thought about that hadith, and we said, okay, maybe Allah can give us somebody, a bigger scholar. So after that, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed us to get personal classes with Sheikh Wasil Abbas. He was one of the big scholars in Mecca and Hadith. And so with Sheikh Wasil, we studied Kitab al-Tawheed, we studied Mustalah Hadith. What else we studied? Kitab al-Tawheed. Yeah. What was the name of that book? Astaghfirullah. Yeah. We studied Kitab al-Tawheed with him and Mustalah Hadith.
Was it other
after? Wait. And then after that, we simultaneously was taking classes with Sheikh Abdul Majid al-Subayl. Sheikh Abdul Majid al-Subayl, he taught us a book, Umdat al-Fiqh. We studied that book literally. So myself and Jamil started that book with him. Then Abu Sajid came a couple years after us. I didn't get it in 10 years. I didn't finish the book with the Sheikh, but he finished it. That's how he finished it.
No.
All right. And he also taught us Qawaid, a science called Qawaid. And then we studied with Sheikh Muhammad al-Harbi. We studied with him everything, fiqh, usul, hadith, you name Aqidah.
No.
We studied a lot of books with him. Then my last year before I graduated, there was a judge that also spent a lot of time with. His name was Sheikh Nizar al-Shu'aibi. He was one of the I guess you would call him Supreme Court judges in Mecca. He was big. And I was fortunate enough to benefit from him because I studied in a judge program. Some of the judges in Mecca would come and teach classes so that we would understand what's going on. He and I developed a relationship, so he would allow me to come to the courtrooms with him while he presided over cases and showed me how to do it. So I got a lot of benefit from him. So my last year before I graduated, he said, I want to go over something with you. So he went over with me Qiyas. Qiyas in Usul al-Fiqh is one of the most, after Dalalat al-Alfaz, like the how do you translate Dalalat al-Alfaz? I don't even know how to translate that. Basically, how to read and understand what you're going through. And like, say, for example, you read a hadith or ayah, how to break it down and pull out the verdicts from it. He taught me Qiyas, right? So he said, we're going to go to Medina. And so I literally drove in a car. It was him and two judges. And we literally drove and read through the book Al-Kafi from Ibn Qudama. We read through a whole volume of Ibn Qudama's Al-Kafi. And the reason for that, because he wanted to show me how to use Qiyas. So when the ulama mentioned two things, how to pick out, basically it was like an exercise, a tajreeb, how to exercise, how to use. So we read through the whole book. And so when we were reading, I think it was the second volume. And so when we were reading through it, he made sure I understood every way to use Qiyas. Now, I'm not as sharp because I've been back here for a long time and we kind of fell off a lot since being back in America. But that was something that he was keen on making sure I understood. He also gave me some advice too. Okay.
A question. For the people that don't know what Qiyas is, what is Qiyas used for in Islam?
All right, Qiyas is analytical deduction. So let's say, for example, all right, this is what it's used for. If somebody says to you, can I get high, yes or no? You're like, no, it's haram. They're going to say, where in the Quran and Sunnah can you show that it's haram? They're going to use Qiyas. They're going to yuqis. They're going to compare that to drinking alcohol. So when you compare that to drinking alcohol, that's how you get the impermissibility of it. So he spent that time showing me how to use that particular science. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Alhamdulillah.
Those are the personal classes.
So
you want to talk about the
from your who was your public study, like your public teachers was in a public sittings? Who was your teachers by name?
So I want to mention the mashayikh that were not from Mecca, that would come to Mecca, that we'll benefit from. So I wrote some of this down. So Sheikh Saleh Fawzan, we benefited from him every summer. And sometimes we'll go up to Ta'if to benefit from him because that's where the Hayatul Kibar Ulama would come together in the summer times in Ta'if. We also benefited from Sheikh Abdul Aziz Ali Sheikh, the Mufti. We also benefited from Sheikh Abdullah Gudayan, rahimahullah ta'ala. We also benefited from Sheikh Salih Luhaydan, rahimahullah ta'ala. Sheikh Abdullah bin Aqil, rahimahullah. Sheikh Abdul Kareem al-Khudayr, we benefited from him. Sheikh Abdul Rahman Ajlan, rahimahullah ta'ala, also from the major scholars of Mecca. And then, but see, Abdul Rahman Ajlan, he's from Mecca, so he wasn't a visitor. He was a person. I studied with him Subul as-Salam, like parts of Subul as-Salam. There's another sheikh that we benefited from. His name was Sheikh Yahya al-Mudarris. Sheikh Yahya al-Mudarris. If you ever saw us teach a class, we have a mud, right? Remember that? You ever see us teach a fiqh class on how to? So we got that mud from Sheikh Yahya Mudarris. He the one that gave us al-ijaza, going back to Zayd ibn Thabit. But he passed away, rahimahullah ta'ala. Another scholar we benefited from in Mecca was Sheikh Muhammad ibn Adam al-Ethiopi, rahimahullah. This sheikh was, no one knew who he was. So we was there for 10 years. We didn't get a chance to benefit from him probably until the last 4 years of us studying. And everyone, he was like a myth. Like Sheikh Muhammad, no one knew who he was. He was hidden, but he was a big scholar. He wrote like an explanation of Sunnah Nasa'i, which is like 50, 60 volumes. Sheikh Abdul Majid al-Subayl, he told us, he said, Sheikh Muhammad ibn Adam al-Ethiopi, he's the sheikh that the scholars go sit with to study. So out of all the American students, the first American student who to sit with him, to learn from him, was Amin Manning. Amin Manning was the one who came back and told all of us about, he actually met him, because we didn't believe him. He was like, yeah, right, you don't, he was like, I'm telling you. So Amin Manning, he showed us who Sheikh Muhammad ibn Adam Ethiopi was, and that's when we all started going to his classes. Other than that, Amin Manning was the first American to meet him from all the Americans, and the first American to start studying with him. So by the time we got to study with him, he was starting Sahih Bukhari. He started Kitab al-Wahi, the Book of Revelation. So we actually started that with him, with Sheikh Muhammad ibn Adam al-Ethiopi. In his class, subhanAllah, we used to go to his class and felt like we ain't belong. Wow. Yeah. It was 2 times in my life while studying Islam that I felt I didn't belong in a class. The first class was Al-Lum'ah. It was a kitab for Usul al-Fiqh. When we first got there, Sheikh Muhammad Bazmoul was teaching this class at one of the masjids in Mecca. And I'm sitting in the class, and I don't know what the heck is going on. I'm looking around in circles, watching everybody else. I didn't know what was going on. And then this class, by this time, we were already in our studies, so we had some knowledge, a little bit. So by the time we started sitting with Muhammad ibn Adam, rahimahullah ta'ala, sitting in this class, we didn't understand anything. You might read the hadith, but after that, he would go into every person in the chain on the hadith, his whole life story, everything you need to know about it, fiqh, hadith, lugha, everything you could, aqidah, everything you could think of, he will put everything in one. It might take 2 classes to go over one hadith. And we're in a class for over an hour and a half. So I used to sit in this class and scratch my head like, why am I here? And this class used to be packed. I'm talking about, so how big was this class? Yeah, it filled up to the max. This place and probably another classroom, another center as well. Yeah, so that's Muhammad ibn Adam. The next one was Sheikh Muhammad al-Banna, rahimahullah ta'ala. Sheikh Muhammad al-Banna, I didn't benefit from him in terms of knowledge, but I benefited from him in terms of manners and adab. Every day I would go to the haram in Mecca to do Quran. And every day he would be sitting on the second floor, calling all the tulab over, giving everybody tea every single day. He was there every day. That was like his spot. Brothers would wait for him to come in and ask him questions. And every time I was at the haram, I made sure I stopped by and talked to him and get some tea. But he was very kind, courteous. He had excellent manners. So that's what I benefited from him. The next one, Sheikh Hassan al-Bukhari, Hafidullah. He taught us Arabic in the Mahad. And he also taught us, right now he's one of the scholars in the haram. So he has a class. I learned a lot from him. And he was one of the mashayikh that every year I come back, if I see him, he'll ask me, did you finish the Quran yet? And I'm like, no, I didn't finish yet. He looked at me like, stuck for the law. And then I feel horrible and just try to get away from him after that. And Sheikh Abdul Malik al-Subayl, this is Sheikh Abdul Majid al-Subayl's brother. He taught me Roda Murbir. He was the first sheikh to teach us fiqh. And he said, the way you study fiqh is not trying to find a dalil, but you need to understand the author. I learned that concept from him. He said, this is the way the Salaf studied fiqh. You study fiqh by understanding what the author intended. Not what you want it to be, but what he intended. Once you understand that material, then it becomes easier later on to come with your own opinions later and figure out what's more correct later. But you can't do that unless you understood what the author intended. Did I leave anybody off? And briefly, prior to me graduating, a model would be Sheikh Hatim al-Sharif. I didn't really benefit too much from him, but he had some classes that I would go to about hadith and stuff like that. I'm trying to think who else. Mashayikh in Medina. And the Mashayikh in Medina, we didn't go to Medina a lot. When we did go to Medina, obviously we made it a point to visit some of the Mashayikh there. Or the ones that we did benefit from and got some benefit from was Sheikh Abdul Muhsin al-Badr, Sheikh Abdul Razak, his son. We benefited when we first got there from Sheikh Ubaid al-Jabiri, Sheikh Ali Nasser Faqih, Sheikh Salih Suhaimi, Sheikh Ahmed Najmi, rahimahullah. He passed away. Also, Sheikh Zayd al-Madkhali, we benefited from him. He was from Jizan. Both of them were from Jizan. Sheikh Ahmed al-Najmi and Sheikh Zayd were from Jizan. And we also benefited from a little bit from Sheikh Muhammad bin Hadi al-Madkhali.
Okay. What was the difference between the students of Mecca and the students of Medina?
So the students in Medina, they were a lot younger than us. So you got to figure, if we were 25, 26, 27, a lot of the Medina students were like 19, 20. We had families and kids. A lot of them were young guys, so we didn't really have much in common. In Mecca, our circle of brothers didn't allow playing around. Like if a student was like, let's say Saeed got a bad grade in the class, and they would post the grades on a wall so everybody could see. So if I walked past and saw his grade was like not excellent, we grinded him up, or that's how it was. Like we didn't accept none of that. Like you wasn't allowed to not be a decent student around us. We didn't accept it. I remember, whereas in Medina, I'm not mentioning no names, but as Medina, some of the brothers would come visit us in Mecca, and they'd be okay that they failed classes. We'd be like, what? And we look at them like, y'all couldn't make it up here with us. We didn't play that. But so Medina, I'm not saying that they didn't have knowledge. I'm saying that in Mecca was a big difference. In Medina, there were a lot of younger guys, and we were a lot older, so certain things we didn't tolerate.
Okay. We know the saying that steel sharpens steel. Back in America, we heard about these famous religious debates of the students of Mecca between the students of Medina, and some sessions lasted all night. Can you give the listeners a brief description of these amazing gatherings?
Alhamdulillah, it was nice. So we would go to Medina.
Who?
Myself, Jamil Finch, Saeed. Who else was with us? That was it. Well, it would depend, but mostly it would be us. Mm-hmm. So we'll go to Medina, but in our mindset, we're going to trash these boys in Medina when we get there because they don't know their stuff. That was how we used to think. Mm-hmm. So we would go down to Medina, and it was all fun. It wasn't like, it was like, no, let's sharpen, let's see what you know. Mm-hmm. So we'll get to Medina, we'll go over any issue, any hadith, fiqh, Aqidah, Usul, Lugha, whatever you think of, we would just, because we wanted to see where we was at compared to them. Mm-hmm. So it got to a point where, it was all right. And then Mufti came to Medina, so he kind of like changed the landscape a little bit. So when Mufti got to Medina, if he's watching this, Mufti, we used to give it to you a little bit. And then after a while, he got his weight up and started taking it to us. So that's how it was. It was fun.
MashaAllah.
It was fun.
What brothers in Mecca that you was very close with, meaning study partners or friends?
Study partners, it was just myself, Abu Sajid, and Jamil Finch. Like, I'm talking about like study, like memorize together, go to class. It was us most of the time.
Okay.
Until the end. Towards the end, it wasn't like that, but in the beginning, it was us. It started off with me and Jamil Finch, and then it went to Abu Sajid came, then became the three of us, and then Jamil did his own thing, and it became me and Abu Sajid.
Okay. How do you feel about Jamil Finch's statement that he made on Twitter that he said, Jamil Finch stated, all my classes and talks are postponed indefinitely. May Allah make all the proceedings sincere in accordance with the Sunnah and a benefit to all the Muslims?
I mean, honestly, in reality, I think that Jamil Finch not teaching is a loss to the city. It's a loss to the city. The city needs him to be teaching. And in my opinion, I don't know anybody in their camp sharper than him. Nobody. And I don't know why. I mean, honestly, he needs to be teaching. He's the most qualified, in my opinion, out of all of them to be teaching. And so, even though we have our differences, he may have said some things about me over the years, but the facts are the facts. The fact of the matter is he's the most qualified. And if he's not teaching, that's a problem, because I don't know who's able to teach if he's not teaching.
Okay. What classes or subjects in Islam was the most difficult for you, and why?
The most difficult, I would say, was usul al-fiqh and mawarith, Islamic inheritance and usul al-fiqh.
How did you get to operate in Mecca, being though was you familiar with the Arabic language, or you had to learn from scratch being there?
I mean, I studied a little bit here. There was a school in Virginia. It was a ma'had that everybody would go to in Northern Virginia. So I studied a little bit of Arabic there. But by the time I got to Mecca, I didn't really know much. And so I pretty much learned in the, my first day in the Arabic program in Qura. It was funny because me and Jamil Finch started around the same time. He was in one class and I was in another class. So we weren't in the same classrooms, but we were in the same level at the time. So the first class, they would, they had a class teaching, and the whole class was in Arabic. So by the end of the class, the teacher got up and walked out. I'm like, man, who's going to translate? And nobody translated. So I was like, dang. So I saw, I'm like, yo, did somebody translate your class? He was like, no. So now I went to panic mode a little bit, like, that. How we supposed to learn? And then every day was the same thing, and then we started picking up a little by little by little, and it just came.
Was there a point in your life or during like Ramadan making Tarawih that you had one of them light bulb moments, like I finally understand what the Quran is saying?
Yeah, so I remember, so when I first got there, it was around the time, we got there in 04, 05. And Shadeed Muhammad was getting ready to graduate 2 years after, 3 years after. So he graduated in 07. By that time, my Arabic still wasn't like, my Arabic's still weak now, but it was weaker then, right? He said, we were all down at the Haram praying Tarawih together. And I was like, dang, man, like my Arabic really not that strong yet. Like, well, matter of fact, it might have been before that. I might have been there for like maybe like a year, but I think it wasn't the year we graduated. It might have been a year before he graduated. I was only there for like 6 months to a year, and Ramadan came. And I was looking at him like, damn, man, one day, man, I wish I could just understand. He looked at me and said, man, don't worry. He said, by the time you graduate, you're going to understand a whole lot more than you understand now. And I was like, yeah, whatever. I can't see that far. But by the time I graduated, it was Ramadan, and there was another young student praying with me, and I said, dang, subhanAllah, I remember someone told me this. So, yeah.
So you passed on the information?
Yeah, same thing.
Alhamdulillah. What class was your favorite, and what scholar that you benefit the most from?
When you say what scholar I benefited the most from, I think it's different stages in my talib, different stages while I was studying. I can tell you about the end stage, and I can tell you at the beginning.
Both.
So the end stage, I would say, was Sheikh Nizar al-Shu'aibi, because studying with him, he basically combined everything that I studied all the way up until that point, and then he showed me something that I never knew before. So, like my last year, I was open up to a whole lot of stuff that I never knew before. He showed me how to look through a lot of the books of the past, a lot of books from the scholars of the past. So he would take me with him with a group of judges, and they would like have cookouts on late nights on the top of mountains. So he would take me with them, and they would barbecue on mountains, and everybody had books open. Everybody may have a different book reading. So he was like, all right, you, Ali, open up the Sharh al-Kabir, the Shamsuddin, Ibn Qudama. Read this part. He going to explain it. It was a different way of studying. I was like, Dad, this is different. So I was open up to that my last year. In the beginning, the most benefit I got was from Sheikh Abdul Majid al-Sabail. He taught us how to be students. One day, we came to class with Sheikh Abdul Majid al-Sabail, and at the time, I think we're in the Arabic program. Almost finished, right? Mecca, Akhbar of Mecca. All right, so me and Jamil was just finished the Arabic program. Saeed was still in the Arabic program. So me and Jamil, we came to class one day, and we had this newspaper we was trying to start up. It was called Akhbar Mecca. It was called Mecca News, and we wanted to translate stuff. So we came to class, and before class started, we're like, Sheikh, look what we want to do. We want to do this, this, and this. And he's quiet. We talking about the whole. And after that, he said, listen, when I give y'all time to study with me, don't waste my time on this. He said, if you want to be a translator, go to Egypt. Go somewhere else. Or if you want to be a translator, you finish your 2 years of study and go back to your country. Don't waste my time with this. They said, you'll have time to give dawah later. Right now, y'all still don't know nothing. We was like, dang. So that like humbled us. We was like, oh, we need to just get off the internet and stop doing that and focus on studying.
After seeking knowledge, what was the most important thing that you took away from this whole life experience of studying Islam abroad?
I'm going to tell, there's a lot of important things, but this is what I will say. Before I graduated, Sheikh Nazar Shu'aibi sat me down in his house. And he said, listen, Ali, he said, you're about to go back to America. It's going to be a whole different world for you. He said, but I'm going to give you this advice. He said, whatever sins you commit, those are your sins, don't attribute it to Islam. And I was like, that's deep. He said, whatever sins you commit, they're your sins, and don't tie it to the religion. Those are your mistakes, not the religion's. The religion is free from whatever mistakes you make. And I was like, all right, cool. But that's the thing that stuck in my mind when I left.
Okay. How did you spend your free time outside of the university?
Working, studying, reading, writing. That was it. Our life, to be honest, even when it was time to take our kids out to the parks, we had books with us and blankets. Kids running around, we reading books. We created for ourselves, we created an environment where we were not, even if I talk to somebody on the phone, all right, what book you reading? Where you at? How long is it gonna take you to finish? What issues you got? Like, that's how we were. So our life, our thing was, we left America to come over here to study. Let's not play around. Let's not play around, because we didn't have time to play. So our thing was, if we're going to leave America, let's not waste our time. There was a group of students, they was called the Starbucks Brothers. Some students be in Starbucks all day. Some students, as he told me, some students, they would have tests for Sirah, and they would read, like, they watched the movies like The Message and stuff like that. Like, that was disgraceful and disrespectful to us. So for us, our circle of brothers, you couldn't do that. You couldn't do that. None of the students in Mecca would tolerate that. And that was the good thing about Mecca. The students that were in Mecca at the time we were there, nobody played around. And this is why I tell you, students of knowledge that study, everyone knows everyone's level. So you can't pump fake. You can't. What I notice about being back in America is people get on a mic and start talking, and we could listen to it. And this is not like I'm from the students or not, I'm from the bottom of the bunch. But if I hear somebody else talk, I know you from the bottom too. You from below me. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like, I know you don't know what you're talking about. And I could just tell if somebody, and this comes from sitting with ulama, a brother opens his mouth, you automatically know his level. Automatically. Because when they talk, it's certain things they consider when they say, and this is stuff that studying with scholars, they teach you how to analyze speech. If we're studying, think about it. We're studying in a judicial program, right? One of the biggest things that we had to focus on the person's speech, what they say, because what they say may lead to a verdict. So we were trained to listen to a person talk. A person might come to us with a question. They might be talking for 10 minutes. They think everything they're giving us is pertinent to the ruling, but it's not. We're only listening for certain things, right?
Keywords. Yeah,
we're listening for key words. Okay. I can't tell you what they are. I just know what they are. So when you're talking, I'm like, all right, boom. It's like a mind map. Once I fill this map, I already know what your issue is without the rest. I don't need the rest of your story because it's not pertinent. The same thing applies. When I hear people give lectures and talks, I'll automatically know where they're at. I'll automatically, he didn't study that. Why would he say that? We don't say nothing, but amongst ourselves, am I right? Amongst ourselves, we can listen to brothers give lectures and be like, we don't say nothing, but we know. No. And they know. The one that's giving a lecture know. You know when you're talking about something, you know what you're talking about. The masses don't know, but we know. No. But we don't say nothing.
Was it ever a time that you became overwhelmed with the living arrangement in Saudi Arabia? Like, did your weight fluctuate? Your job, your income. Was it ever overwhelming time for that?
Man, listen. It was times we ain't had no money. It was times, literally, we would leave out to go to school. I didn't have no money, like no food, no nothing, struggling. I might have had like 2 reals to get a fools and Timmy's, like bread and, what was the foods to eat? Full bread and beans. That was like 2 reals. That might be the dinner sometimes. Kids don't know. They like, oh, bet. We like, man, that's all we got. But so we would leave out to go to school at times. Sometimes we had no money, and you feel like I don't have nothing. But then when you go study, it's like you feel rich at the end of the day. That was the benefit of studying. There were times when the water would go out, and you got to take a shower with a bucket of water, and then use the bucket to flush it down the toilet. I just got back from Umrah. And I showed a couple brothers where we used to live. So the brother said, man, I'd rather be down 20. He said, I'd rather be down Diamond Street. Man, I ain't messing with y'all. Y'all crazy. Living up in mountains. I said, man, this is crazy. So, yeah, it was, we look back at it now because we're older now. It's like, that was crazy. But it was, at the time, it was what we felt like that's what we needed to do to get what we wanted. And even with that, we still left a lot of meat on the bone. Like myself, I left a lot of meat on the bone. And, if I'm able, if Allah wills, that I can go back and study, if I could do it all over again, I would. It was the best experience of my life.
Did living overseas affect your family dynamics and relationship, household-wise, in your family back home?
Yeah, it's rough. A lot of people that go overseas and study, when they come back, their families don't make it. That's just history. Not everybody, but a lot of brothers, they lose their families. It's rough. Everybody not built for that type of living. It wasn't like we was living in Saudi and we was working over there. We was living in Saudi as students, and if we were working, we weren't supposed to be. So we like under the table trying to eat. So it was definitely a rough. And this is why I mentioned the other day in the khutbah, I said, look, parents, you send your kids to college, send your kids to go study deen and take care of them. If we didn't have to work, I feel like if we didn't have to work, we could have achieved so much more. But half our time, we have families, we got to go to school, work, Myself and Abu Saj, we used to ride an hour and a half to go to work today. And every time we go to work, we got a book that we got to read. We made it a point that we got to study while we're riding. So if he's driving, I'm reading. He's reading, I'm driving. Every day. That's how we had to get it.
So did you have a driver's license over there to rent a car? Or y'all had a car, bought a car or something?
Yeah, we had a Saudi driver's license over there, yeah.
What kind of car y'all had?
Squatters.
Squatters. Any famous stories about these cars?
Man, before I left, I had a clown car.
The little ones?
Yeah. There's a lot of stories about that, man. We got caught in a flood. Me and him almost got killed by what was that truck called? One of them pickup trucks. We was on a hill, driving up the hill, and we was like, man, why is this truck stuck on the hill? Next thing you know, it started rolling back, and we racing down like, oh my gosh, Allahu Akbar. And then, alhamdulillah, we survived it. It didn't hit us, but it crashed into a building, killed the cat. So yeah, we got a lot of stories, like a lot of.
What college did you graduate from in Mecca? What year did you graduate?
So I graduated from the College of Judicial Law, and this was in 2014.
Okay. What happened with Sheikh Nazar al-Shu'aibi? What was the advice that he gave you before graduating?
About sins. Staying away from sin. If you're going to commit sins, don't tie it to the religion. Okay. Separate the religion from your own personal deficiencies.
Is it safe to say your highest level of Islamic studies was a bachelor's degree in Islamic jurisprudence? That's what it is?
So I have a bachelor's degree in Islamic judicial law. Okay. The highest degree that we got was, me personally, was a bachelor's. I could have went and got my master's or PhD, but we were struggling. I had to make some money. I had kids, family, so that was part of the reason coming back to America.
So it's important to have a steady income to keep pursuing knowledge, basically.
Listen, parents, if your kids want to study deen, support them so that they don't have to work. Because here's the reality. This is the part that people don't understand. When you go study Islam and you come back to America, people think that your time don't matter to you. So they want to pull you in all directions. You might get people come all day with questions and they need help, and everybody's issue is the most important to them. And it's like, well, you got to understand, he got to make a living for himself too. You got to eat. And people don't necessarily consider that when you're in that particular space. So yeah, having said that, parents, support your kids if they want to go study Deen, take care of them. Our community needs to take, in these other communities, they take care of their people. Okay. They send them overseas to study, they pay for them, they get them an apartment, they make sure they're good. If the student of knowledge is good, then they can focus on their studies 24/7, depending on the type of person they are.
Okay. How many years did you live in Mecca?
10 years.
How many out them 10 years did you spend studying Islam before graduating?
10 years. There was no time off.
Okay. Did you know after graduating from Qura that you have to return back to America to live?
While I was studying or after I finished studying?
Was there ever a rumor, or you just believe that you being over there, that you'll live over there forever?
To be honest, when I got there, I never thought about coming back. I never thought about giving dawah. I never thought about being no imam. To us, it was already brothers doing that. I'm not doing that. What am I gonna do that for? Okay. We didn't want to be, even now, we didn't want to be in this, but this wasn't something like, hey, let's go and open up something. The reason why we even opened up this is different. We only did this because we wanted a place to teach. No. We was looking to grab a little small corner. He told us, man, y'all tripping. Even when we first got this place, we're like, man, this place too big. Ain't nobody gonna come here and listen to us. At the time, we was innovators in the city. I don't know if y'all remember that.
Yeah.
Y'all remember that? We was Ikhwan. What else was it? Ikhwani and all this other. We was innovators. So I'm like, since we innovators, ain't nobody gonna come listen to us anyway.
Okay. What was the hardest part coming back to America after leaving Mecca?
Being broke. One thing, being broke in Saudi was decent. Like, everybody was broke with you. When you come back here, everybody not broke, you broke. The thing is, in Saudi, if you struggling and we around all students, it's like everybody in it together. Coming back to America, like, no, it's just you, cuz you ain't got no money. You struggling. And to be honest, it was a real struggle, and people don't see that. People don't know that. Especially if you come back to America with a family and you don't have no support, it's like you really coming working from the muscle. You don't have nothing.
Wow.
And people don't consider that unless, so that was rough. That was really rough. And I think coming back, none of us really wanted to come back to America, for real, for real. We wanted to stay over there.
Wow. What was some of the advice the scholars gave you, knowing that you was returning back to your country here in America?
Teach the people Islam. Don't look to the left, because many of them knew that we were, getting refuted by people here. And they said, man, if you teach the people going to see the truth through knowledge. So you could talk all day, but once you start going through them books, it's going to separate people. So that's what we focus on. You can say what you want about us. Let's go to the books. What book you pull that from? So we started Zad and was stuck in there. I don't know anybody else that was teaching that. So when we start going through these books, stuff gonna become clear. We start teaching stuff like Usul al-Fiqh. We start teaching books of Aqidah, like what was the book that we did? Muqtasar of it's just I want to be a Muslim. Ma'arij al-Qubul, right? You start teaching stuff like that, things become clear. It's like, okay, maybe they might not be innovators all the way. You know what I'm saying? Not all the way, maybe partially, because we don't see them at certain places.
No. Eman Muslim Family Center is one of the fastest growing Muslim community inside the city of Philadelphia right now. There was over 5,000 Muslims at Eid al-Fitr at the convention center last year, and about 5,000 that came to 3801 Market Street for this Eid. Being as though all the Muslims came out to the sport, IMFC, was this a humbling moment for you?
SubhanAllah. Yes, it's all humbling at the end of the day. It's humbling that it's people here listening to us. Like, we never, like, our thing, we're as regular could be. No. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're regular people. So sometimes it's hard to imagine that people come and listen. Like, we know our reality. See, to y'all, I'm gonna be honest. So everybody here, whoever's online, y'all might think we all right, student. We're not though. Well, I'm honest enough to tell you, in the land of students of knowledge, we're not from the top, we're from the bottom. But it is what it is. I'm not saying we can't reach that level, but we're not at that level. Like, that's just the truth. We're not at that level. And studying Islam, it gives you the opportunity to know your level, know your lane. So So it's humbling because it's like, Dad, like we not even like that, for real. And people come and listen to us. It's crazy. So then in our lane, it makes us more afraid, right? Because like, Dad, what if we say something that ain't right? And this is why, to be honest, Sheikh Abdul Majid al-Sabail, he told us that his sons watch and listen to our stuff. So one of the reasons why the stuff is on live is that we make a mistake, we waiting for a phone call. Hey, you said this in that lecture, because I'm like, bet, let me hurry up and change it. We don't have no, if we said anything that's incorrect or wrong Islamically, we don't have no problems taking it back. That's easy. That's easy. But our thing is, if we say something and it's wrong, we have no problems taking it back. But if we say something that you disagree with and you think is wrong, let's talk about it. I know why I said what I said, but if it's wrong, let's talk about it. I mean, it's not that deep.
How did your father feel when he found out you was an imam?
Man, it's a funny story. My dad was funny. I told you this. So my dad came to visit. So my dad moved to Atlanta. My mom and dad moved to Atlanta when I went overseas, right? My dad came back to Philly to visit me. This was like 9 years ago. And it was Friday. This was when I was the imam in South Philly. So I said, Dad, I got to give a khutbah. He's like, what's that? I said, I got to give like a Friday sermon, if you will. He's like, all right, I want to come. I was like, all right. So my mom and dad both came. So my dad was in the back, so they put a chair up. My dad was old, so he put a chair up. He said, wait a minute, wait a minute, son. You mean to tell me all these people here coming to listen to you? And I was like, yeah. He said, well, who the heck is you? I said, man, I don't know, Dad. They think I'm somebody. I don't know. So I think about that. It's funny. Because he was like, man, well, why somebody listening to you?
Was there ever a goal you set out to do Islamically that you haven't done yet?
Finish the Quran. And that's one of my, honestly, so here's the thing. Any young brothers that want to go study Deen, as soon as you get there, it's two things. Focus on your Arabic and Quran. Finish the Quran while you're in the Arabic program. The reason why, and I can't put this on other brothers, but the advice that we got was, you can always finish the Quran later, sit with the ulama. My advice, the ulama, inshallah, you'll get there, but you're not qualified yet. Get your Arabic and Quran down so when the ulama start talking about dalil and evidence, you understand what it is. And this is the minhaj of the ulama. Finish the Quran and Sunnah. Some of the ulama wouldn't even let you sit in their sittings unless you had the Book of Allah memorized. And that's real. So, yeah, that's my advice. Any young brother that want to study Deen, finish the Book of Allah.
What is any advice that you will give the youth that is watching who's considering about applying to one of the Islamic universities?
I'm going to give you the advice that Muhammad Amin, may Allah preserve him and cure him, Ameen. He gave me advice back in 2003. He came to visit in Maryland because he's from D.C. originally. He said, I saw him one morning for Fajr, and I told him I wanted to apply and study the religion. So he told me, he said, listen, he said, Ali, if you serious, he said, this is what you need to do. He said, fast on Mondays and Thursdays and the white days of every month. Get up, and he said, get up in the last third, fast on Mondays and Thursdays and the white days of every month, and inshallah, Allah will make it easy for you to go study. And so I took that and I tried to do that. And alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed me to go study Islam.
Okay. After studying Islam abroad for close to a decade, what tools do you have now that gives you the ability to understand Islam? What tools did the mashaykhs help you with to understand Islam now?
I don't know, man. I mean, I know what I don't know. I mean, I studied a little bit of fiqh, a little bit of usul. So I got introductory stuff, some stuff maybe in the middle. I know enough to know what I know, and I know enough to know what I don't know.
Okay.
And I know enough to know if somebody's talking in front of me, they don't know what they're talking about.
Okay. And
I hope that makes sense.
In our closing question for this interview, after studying and reading the seerah, the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if there was a time in Islam during his lifetime that you could have been a part of or witness, what would it be?
To be honest, I don't even think I would have been qualified to live during the time of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And that's real talk. And this is due to, there's a hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam that said that every generation that comes after is worse than the one that came before. I don't know who could I have been in that generation. Nobody. So I don't think I'm worthy to even be considered of even being close, even sniffing the fragrance of the people in that generation.
So after ending this interview, we're going to have opening questions. You open to have opening questions? All right, we're going to stop the live, then we're going to start from the opening questions, inshallah. Jazakallahu khairan.
You want me to stop it? Stop it. Shout offender. I don't even know how to stop this.